Some days, the noise outside feels like it is only getting louder, even when all you want is a moment of calm. This is 10 Better Minutes, a place to slow down and hear a few real stories that bring some quiet balance to the day. Here we share recent moments from the world that remind us things are not only difficult or chaotic. For a little while, you will get a chance to notice the steady, softer parts of life that often go unnoticed. But first, there is a story about a man who took a personal risk to keep a century-old village pub alive, preserving a familiar place for his community to gather. When the Dog and Donkey pub in Knoll, Budleigh, Salterton was set to be sold to the highest bidder, one longtime supporter stepped in quickly. Peter Manfield, who is 73 and moved to the village in 1997, chose to act instead of watch. He remortgaged his home to borrow the money needed to keep the place open, and he did it to protect something much bigger than a business. The Dog and Donkey is not just any pub. It was erected in 1926 as the Britannia Inn, and it still holds onto its original character, including an original fireplace and an original tiled floor. Manfield bought the pub in 2024 for around $270,000. And after he took over, he met the new manager, Mark Lofton, while getting a haircut. Lofton agreed to try the job as bar manager, even though he had never run a pub before. Today, Manfield says the pub is thriving. Lofton shares the same values, keeping it a traditional pub that feels like the village heart. On any day, you might find people gathering for meetings, dog walkers stopping by for a warm welcome, or skittle teams heading in together after their games. It is a simple story with a steady message. Trust in people looks like practical courage. One choice, made fast, can help a community keep its voice, its habits, and its place at the center of everyday life. You know how sometimes courage looks ordinary, like the moment someone decides to act without waiting for an adult. Here is a story about quick thinking at snack time that turned into a whole town celebration. At Stephen Olney Elementary School in Rhode Island on April 9th, a 7-year-old student named Samir Santana was eating during snack time when his classmate, Jabril, became unable to breathe. Samir noticed what was happening and, instead of freezing, he moved right over. He performed the Heimlich maneuver he had learned the year before in kindergarten health class. Before long, the apple slice that had been lodged in Jabril's throat was dislodged, and the moment shifted from panic to relief. What I love most is how that training became real, not in a big dramatic setting, but in a classroom, with regular kids in an everyday routine. It is a reminder that when people learn skills, those skills do not just sit in a textbook. They wait for a chance to help. Later, the town of North Providence honored Samir with a Citizens Award, named him honorary rescue captain for the day, and issued an official proclamation. Principal Stephen Pichetto said he was proud not just of what Samir did, but of his initiative and willingness to take action. Stories like this make you believe we can trust people to show up for one another, even when it is unexpected. Sometimes hope shows up in the most unexpected way when a life-changing medical gift finds its way back to the people who made it possible. After Georgie Kerwin died in England in 2025, her donated left hand was transplanted to Kim Smith, but medical confidentiality meant the families could not know where it went. Years passed with only letters, and one simple decision began to open a door. Jackie Kerwin, Georgie's mother, agreed to meet Kim if Kim ever reached out again. Kim did, writing a careful note of gratitude and asking whether a meeting might be possible. That reply mattered. It turned unanswered hopes into a real plan. By the end of March, Jackie and Kim finally met, and both of them cried, because gratitude has a weight that language cannot fully carry. They shared what the hand had come to mean in everyday life, not just in a story, but in morning routines and small tasks. Kim said the new left hand made daily living easier, helping her pick up a glass of wine without worry and hold ice cream without dropping it. The remarkable part is that this reunion did not end there. They stayed in touch, letting connection grow beyond the first meeting. In the quiet steadiness of ongoing messages, their gratitude became something practical and lasting, a reminder that compassion can travel farther than anyone expects. Have you ever wondered how ordinary care can turn a crisis into recovery step by step? Today, we follow a tortoise whose path back to comfort was built from careful instructions, steady teamwork, and a plan that kept changing as it healed. A 4-year-old African spurred tortoise, a Geochelone sulcata, arrived at Vets in Practice in the Philippines after being run over by a car not once but twice. Its shell was damaged enough that soft tissue was exposed, along with cracks that would not hold together on their own. The wildlife vet, Donato, and his team moved quickly and methodically. They kept the exposed tissue damp by rinsing the shell with saline, and they focused on preventing flies from laying eggs that could become maggots during the first weeks. Then they stabilized the shell using inverted screws set with epoxy putty, rubber bands, and a wired frame that could lift crushed sections and help align the cracks. As the days passed, the brace was not just a repair. It was a support system that made room for healing. Later, they sealed the cracks with dental acrylic, added antibiotics and pain medication, and included time for sunbasking to support recovery. After weeks of this careful routine, the wired shell brace was removed. The tortoise returned home, moving more actively at a later visit and eating again without the owner worry about appetite. It is a reminder that trust can look like practical work, done gently, on purpose, one detail at a time. Somewhere in France, a small change in a university canteen is making room for students to breathe a little easier. And it starts with one basic need that many people do not talk about enough. Before students could sit down for the familiar rhythm of a 3-course meal, they often had to wait for the right kind of eligibility. A discounted rate had existed, but it was mainly for those on financial aid or with very low incomes. Then a January survey brought an uncomfortable clarity. Almost half of students said they had gone without food for financial reasons, and many described doing it more than once a month. For an 18-year-old student in Paris, the numbers turned into routine. He said he visits the canteen about 20 times a month, and with the universal rate, he expects to pay around 20 instead of around 60. So student unions pushed, and universities listened. The discounted meal became available to all university students regardless of income. The price settled at €1 for the 3-course plate, and the promise was simple. You eat because you are a student, not because you qualify. Now, about 667,000 students benefited in 2024, and meals were counted in the millions, with funding planned to grow by 2027. It is not a grand solution, but it is a steady one. It says, quietly and practically, that education should not come with an empty stomach. As always, I have a simple, steady tip for your mental reset and a way to meet more joy in the middle of ordinary days. Today, we are talking about using repetition to teach your brain a fuller reality. Here's the idea. Your brain does not only learn from what happens, it also learns from what you repeat. Not in a fake, forced way, but in a grounded way, like you are gently training attention and expectation. When you notice your mind snapping to the same narrow story, you can respond with the same helpful phrase again and again until it starts to feel familiar. Try this. Pick one sentence that matches the reality you want to practice. Something like, I can handle this step by step, or this is hard and I am safe enough to continue, or I have people and options. Say it when you wake up. Say it when you are stuck. Say it once before you sleep. Keep it simple and believable. Over time, repetition becomes a signal. Your brain begins to recognize, oh, this is the track we run on. And then your experience has more room to widen, because the story has room to grow. All right, friends, that is the end of this episode of 10 Better Minutes. I hope the end of the segment brings a small exhale, because the point is not that everything is perfect or solved. It is that people keep showing up for one another, often quietly, with kindness, patience, and decency that does not make headlines but still matters. If you have a good news story you have seen lately or something positive happening close to home, share a link or a brief note in the comments. I genuinely love reading those, and they might help someone else find something hopeful today. This is Ian Rhodes with 10 Better Minutes. Take care, and I will see you tomorrow.